Hey, what's up you guys? This is Rob from A Gay Guy Plays, and today we're in for a shock when we get Dressed to Kill with the Storm palette. So first off, I'm not sure if it's just me, but this is totally the wrong name for this palette. This is not at all what comes to mind when I think of a storm whatsoever. If anything, this looks more like a tropical sunset. However, I'm sure that name would be a little out of place in a sci-fi universe filled with space ninjas. The colors found in this one are beautiful coral, soft gold, saturated navy blues, and burgundies, all gradiating into each other, creating some amazing color blends. While it heavily lacks base tones, it has some very surprising shades hidden in between its gradients. Now, as with all standard palettes, you can pick this one up under the equipment tab in the market for 75 plat. So the first three rows are a wonderful gradient that starts off with a red-based orange which blends into a beautiful goldenrod with each subsequent row. Moving from left to right, these tones lose saturation, and in my opinion become much more usable as accent tones and energy colors. The almost red orange shifts into an amazing coral, the balanced orange transitions into an almost creamsicle-like shade, and lastly the yellow orange transitions into a gorgeous slightly pink custard. Now, for those of you who watch the streams, you know that I need to point out the furthest left in this row, as it is my infamous rose gold. It's probably my favorite to use on metallics as it is the perfect balance between pale yellow and coral. Just note that you can find dupes of the more saturated tones in many palettes, however, these sheer tones are exclusive to Storm. Moving on, we take a look at the next three rows, beginning with a slightly warmer yellow which transitions into a muted olive green as you proceed down the rows. Like the previous set of gradients, these lose saturation as you move from left to right. The soft gold shifts into a cream, which I think is beautiful but slightly too saturated to use as a base. The tone warms up in the following row and transitions into a pale gold that I think is fantastic when used on metals. And lastly, the olive green turns into a beautiful dusty yellow green, which is also awesome on metallics as an antique gold. Now, the yellows in the set do have similarities to other palettes, however there are no exact dupes, and the green set is a palette exclusive. Now, the next two rows are a bit interesting as they are both gray based. The first a muted forest green that transitions into a washed out mint, and the second a muted teal that leans a little more on the green side and loses saturation as it shifts to the right. Now, as you know by now, I'm a huge fan of these smoky tones as they look awesome when simulating worn-in frames. And while they don't make the greatest energy colors, they definitely make awesome accent tones and are palette exclusives. The next set of rows are a bit similar to the previous two, however they are significantly more saturated. The first row starts with an inky blue heavy teal that shifts into a dark denim, while the second is a deep blue black that ends in an intense navy blue. Now the darkest tones in this set are so saturated that they could easily pass as a black if you haven't already picked up the Smoke palette. In my personal opinion, I like them even better due to the fact that one step up gives you a slight tonality rather than just a flat shade. And as energy colors go, these are quite nightmarish, so if you're into that, it's a great choice. Just keep in mind there is a similar gradient in the Ice palette, however this is a tad bit more muted. Now the next row is by far one of my favorites in this palette. Like the previous two rows, it starts off as a near black and finishes by revealing this gorgeous violet red base. It's amazing as an energy color, makes an awesome dark base, at its lightest it's an incredible jewel toned accent, and it's only available in this palette. Now the next three gradients warm up a bit, moving from a red-violet base into an almost rusty red-orange. The first starts with a deep burgundy that shifts into what I like to call Gryffindor red. The next red in the set is more balanced than the previous and finishes into this really awesome muted red. In my opinion, it's the perfect balance of tone and saturation for a slightly worn-in accent color. Now, the last row is very similar to the one above it, however, it has just a touch of orange to skew the tone. Honestly, I prefer the previous, but they're both great. One thing to note is that the balanced red tone is dupable with some of the deeper tones in the Valentine's Day palette, however, the other two are not. The next set of gradients is another one of those that for one reason or another are separated. This one begins on this row, skips the following row, and continues on to the next. It starts off as a dark mustardy yellow and finishes on the second row as a brighter green based yellow. Honestly, I'm not the fondest of this as an accent tone, however, the lightest in the first row is the perfect gold to finish off our Gryffindor color scheme. With that said, it's a halfway decent energy color, and while there are a few similar tones in the Grenier palette, it's definitely not dead on. Now the row nestled in between the previous set starts off as a deep olive green and washes out into this muted yellow green. Now, much like the previous shades, I feel like it's a great balance between tone and saturation, and it makes an awesome accent color and energy color. To be honest with you, good muted greens are a bit hard to find, so this is a great addition, especially since you won't find it on any other color palette. The last and final gradient starts off with a vivid goldenrod, which begins to cool off as it gradiates into a bright, slightly green-yellow. Honestly, this is the only vivid of the set, and it does a fantastic job as an energy color. While it doesn't offer variations on its saturation, it does give a nice overall selection to work with. Just keep in mind that practically all of these yellows can be found in other palettes. Now with all that aside, let's get dressed. So all in all, I'm quite fond of the Storm palette. It has a lot of exclusive tones that aren't easy to do, and it has a good amount of varying saturations for each of them. In my opinion, it has some of the best accent colors, some really solid metallics including my signature rose gold, and some very unique energy colors. I think that my only complaints about this palette is that it's lacking lighter base tones. Aside from that, I feel like it's a really strong candidate to be one of the first few palettes that new players should pick up after they get the basics. And as for palette junkies out there, this is a no-brainer. Rose gold and Gryffindor colors? What more could you ask for? So thank you all for watching another episode of Dress to Kill. Be sure to check out the previous episodes, and for those of you with backdoor access, be sure to check out the activities page on the Patreon, as I've got a very interesting proposition for you. Now, don't forget to do all the things that I asked you to do at the end of every one of these, and as always, stay drop dead gorgeous.